Welcome to Around the Empire. I'm your host, Joanne. Co-host today is Kelley Lane, and Craig, Pasta, Jardula, and Fiorella Isabel are here with us today from the Convo Couch. This is a fully independent podcast. Lend your support, patreon.com/aroundtheempire or paypal.me/aroundtheempirepod. Please like, share, and subscribe to YouTube, and stay tuned for some new platforms we're going to add as well very soon. Today we talk about Biden's foreign policy speech and other declarations, and the people who are now returning to the helm of the quote-unquote national security state. We talked about the increase in censorship, including the recent demonetizing of the Convo Couch and others, and the quote-unquote blue fascism of the establishment, and our thoughts on the time being right for a new, broad, independent political movement. There's also a bonus question for patrons about election integrity and the, quote, storming of the citadel of democracy, unquote, on January 6th, and the impeachment that followed. Fiorella and Pasta were there on the ground in Washington that day, and they share with us their observations and analysis of the situation. We recorded this on February 11th, 2021. Welcome, everybody. We have a great show for you tonight. Kelley Lane's co-hosting with me, and we have our friends from the Convo Couch back, Craig Jardula, aka Pasta, and Fiorella Isabel. Thanks so much for coming back on the show. It's great to see everybody.
Great to see you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a few things to talk about tonight, and we're going to start with Biden's foreign policy. And he did a speech, I don't know what, in the past week, and I got a little clip of it.
Space. Today, I'm announcing additional steps to course correct our foreign policy and better unite our democratic values with our diplomatic leadership. To begin, Defense Secretary Austin will be leading a global posture review of our forces so that our military footprint is appropriately aligned with our foreign policy and national security priorities. It will be coordinated across all elements of our national security, with Secretary Austin and Secretary Blinken working in close cooperation. And while this review is taking place, we'll be stopping any planned troop withdrawals from Germany. We're also stepping up our diplomacy to end the war in Yemen, a war which has created a humanitarian and strategic catastrophe. I've asked my Middle East team to ensure our support for the United Nations-led initiative to impose a ceasefire, open humanitarian challenge, and restore long dormant peace talks. This morning, Secretary Blinken appointed Tim Lenderking, a career foreign policy officer, as our special envoy to the Yemen conflict, and I appreciate him doing this. Tim has lifelong experience in the region, and he'll work with the UN envoy and all parties of the conflict to push for a diplomatic resolution. And Tim's diplomacy will be bolstered by USAID, working to ensure that humanitarian aid is reaching the Yemeni people who are suffering unendurable devastation. This war has to end. And to underscore our commitment, we are ending all American support for offensive operations in the war in Yemen, including relevant arms sales. At the same time, Saudi Arabia faces missile attacks, UAV strikes, and other threats from Iranian-supplied forces in multiple countries. We're going to continue to support and help Saudi Arabia defend its sovereignty and its territorial integrity and its people. We also face a crisis of more than 80 million displaced people suffering all around the world.
It's just painful to watch.
It is painful to watch him.
Ow.
So he conjured up a way to freeze all troop withdrawals. He mentions Germany, but he's basically saying we got to look at all our troops all over the world. And now Austin's going to do a God knows how long review And, we're not moving any troops until then, which means Afghanistan, right?
Yep.
And
Syria.
Syria. And, the Washington Post editorial board, whatever you call it, they came right out with a big op-ed saying, Biden has a big decision to make. And we get this right, basically saying he's got a big decision to make, and he better not withdraw any troops from Afghanistan. And maybe India and Russia and some other people can convince the Taliban to. They want them to break the deal, because the deal is that they withdraw by May 1st. And so, they just start suggesting ways that Biden can break out of the Taliban peace deal, which, by the way, the Stars and Stripes just mentioned that we've gone a year now without any troop casualties. So I believe that's a first, and certainly something to, to celebrate. And, it's just very upsetting.
But that happened during the Trump administration too.
Yeah. So, but let me say something too as well, because a year has not gone by without any deaths. We are
Right.
still averaging 22 soldiers killing themselves every day to PTSD for
Right.
what they experience over there. So the fact that they might not die on the battlefield doesn't mean they're not coming home and killing themselves here. And they're doing that at an alarming rate. You know what I'm saying? And we brought this out as soon as Biden became the president. Right now, we're like, wait for the warmongers to come back in. People like Anthony Blinken, who was pretty much on the positive end as far as pushing troops to every single one of these regions, whether it be Yemen, Syria, Libya, whatnot. The guy who got it wrong every single time, they put him right back in place. But hey, man, he did a Sesame Street interview with Grover, so he must be a nice guy. And then they doubled down with Lloyd Austin, who was actually on the board of Raytheon. So now they're saying that they want to stop the deaths inside of Yemen. Most of the bombs that killed all the children and the women over there, the civilians in Yemen, came from where he just worked from, where he was on the board of.
Yeah, I mean, and they were part of the administration that led to a lot of this demise. I mean, we're talking about the administration that went into Libya, the administration that went to Honduras, the administration that of the Obama administration that had massive amounts of drones sent into the Middle East, and that refused to take responsibility for that and framed it as, oh, well, we're not putting soldiers there. No, we're just going to ump up the dronage. And that's the kind of foreign policy you're going to see. It's going to have a pretty, more put together face of imperialism.
Yeah.
It's still imperialism at its worst, but it's just going to be very cryptic, and it's going to be extremely under the radar, because the mainstream media isn't going to be covering the foreign policy blunders in the Biden administration. So you're not going to hear about it, and people are going to think, oh, wow, look, we're helping Yemen. Let me just touch on Yemen really quickly. What he's doing is basically, on one end, trying to fix the things that they started during the Obama administration by, this humanitarian crisis that people have been begging both administrations to stop, to put an end to it. But now they're going to use that to stop the weapon sales to Saudi Arabia on one end, but on another end continue saying Saudi Arabia has a right to defend itself from Iran.
Man,
so you're
exactly.
still going to have those abuses. They're
Yeah.
just saying, they're putting a symbolic front to, okay, now we're going to help the Yemeni humanitarian crisis, but now these people are in no position to have control of their region. So who's going to take control? It's the United States and their allies who are going to be in control.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody the biggest round of applause that happened in Trump's last State of the Union, when Republicans and Democrats standing up together and cheered, is when Juan Guaido was introduced and they were all standing up. So when it comes to regime change, imperialism, and putting in our phony actors around the globe for our corporate needs, it's going to be even amped up. And just like Fiorella said, now they have the mainstream media, which they've always had, to kind of let them go under the radar. So it is a scary moment. And also the point, he's tipping his hat to Israel by going, and Saudi Arabia, but you have to be able to defend yourself from Iran. So don't worry, Israel and Saudi Arabia, you'll still get your weapons.
Right.
And of course, it's
He's
not.
also saying, we're going to still run their air force for them. He doesn't mention that his administration started that war,
Right.
in his, and he's also saying, I'm pretty sure he is saying that we're going to ramp up our operations in Saudi Arabia. And I'd like to know when the offensive support for this offensive operations by Saudi Arabia against Yemen are going to stop, because they haven't. They're still going on right now. And the Houthis just hit an airport in Saudi Arabia, and the Houthis said that it was in response to yet another strike by the Saudis. So they're still bombing Yemen.
Yeah.
I just don't even really believe that offensive operations. I think you could play a lot of games with words there.
Yeah,
100%.
But
But the thing that stunned me the most was just basically putting a halt to all troop withdrawals from anywhere. And I didn't want to play down the other aspects of soldiers, the suffering and the deaths that go on still every day, even though we've had technically no troop deaths in the past year. The point I was really trying to make was, I think the reason why we don't have any casualties is because there's been peace talks with the Taliban.
Oh, yeah.
And what they're trying to do right now is to get out of that deal without looking. They're just trying to find some way out of it. They've been put in a spot now by Trump, and that's kind of what the point I was trying to make there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you that now they have the media on their side. They're either going to cover up what needs to be covered up, and they're going to spin and spin and spin and spin. And already, Syria is a great example. It's like a petri dish of the problems with our foreign policy. In that case, we've got all these different parties who are involved. They have conflicting interests, to the point where there have been times when we've had 3 different groups of mercenaries, basically proxies,
Yep.
on the ground in Syria, firing at each other.
Yeah.
All funded by the military-industrial complex
Yeah.
of the West.
Right.
It's,
Yeah.
And that's our foreign
Moderate
policy.
rebels.
yeah.
Yeah.
Moderate rebels, yeah. ISIS characters, moderate rebels. And by the way, the Democrats use this double talk of like, we got to protect the troops by not withdrawing them. When we were withdrawing them, we're putting the troops in harm's way. And why the hell do we still need troops in Germany? Why did Biden talked about, why do we still need troops in Germany? We got to watch out for the Cold War against Russia. I mean, it's Germany, 2021.
Well, I think I know why. We all know some reasons why, but one of them is they can't run their Middle East operations without the bases that we have in Germany. A lot of things are based there. It's really key because we're fighting wars in places that are too far away to fight them.
Yeah.
But I believe that it's key. Plus, there's all kinds of money. Once you put an American base in, particularly one that's been there for 70 years, all kinds of money's flowing into that region. It would be an economic disaster for, and one of the things that Trump used to say is we pay the defense budget of other countries. These, immaculate allies of ours that Biden talks about.
Yeah.
So isn't part of the problem though, is obviously it's not just mainstream media, it's all the social media too, the censorship, and I mean, they've got a grip on that too. And what's probably most disheartening to me is I think, we're seeing another generation. You could see I guess a lot of the Bernie supporters in 2020 are still very in the dark when it comes to foreign policy. I've got my 16-year-old now on following Raina Kalick, I think that's how you pronounce it, on Instagram, and she loves her videos. I think maybe you saw that when I put on Twitter, but she encapsulates stuff very, in a package that maybe younger generation can understand. But I think that's part of the huge problem, is that they put this face on. We see this, oh, Kamala wears Converse, and I just about died when I saw she went on Billie Eilish, her channel or something. My daughter loves her music, but it's like they're doing the same things that they've been doing all along. And I know, I fell for it with Obama, but until the general public wakes up more, I guess, especially the younger generation, to what we're doing around the world. I mean, it's why we can't have nice things here. It's why we can't fix a lot of the problems here, why we can't have health spending. And I just think there's just this disconnect. And until we fix that, and I don't really know how, other than maybe some channels like yours talking about it more. Joanne's channel's done great for covering these issues for a long time, but the right, or the libertarian kind of independent right, is way ahead of us on the progressive side with those issues. So.
Yeah. And what could be more racist than going around and bombing indigenous people in their homelands? I mean, really, to the social justice warriors out there who can't wrap their head around that our domestic policy and our foreign policy are intertwined, and why we have such a history of violence at home, because we go around the world bullying, bombing, and sanctioning and killing millions of people. So, I mean, what can be more racist than that?
Right. That's what we need to.
Biden's been doing it for since the 1970s. He's all in for all of these wars, and it's always Black and brown people who are getting killed. The people who suffer the most in any war zone are the women and the children, all the people he claims to be protecting.
Yeah. Well, I got to correct you there too, because a lot of people have said that all you do is go around and bomb and make regime change wars against brown and Black people. So he said, okay, let me go to Ukraine and help over there in Eastern European, so we get some white people into the mix over there, get some vanilla in that blender for Joe Biden. And he was the one who led the charge over there too as well. A lot of people forget that was all about Joe Biden and Victoria Nuland. And guess what? All these people are back in the government with jobs. They're running shit again.
Yeah,
it's a Pandora's box, that Ukraine story. I've been on that for a few years.
Yeah.
Well, they will keep us busy for 4 years covering what all of his cabinet picks, what they're doing. But I don't know how many people are really paying attention to it. Are progressives following this?
No.
Just like,
Ukraine? No. They think it's conspiracy theory, a lot of them, because of it was only being reported in right-wing publications, because obviously publications like The Intercept did not allow Glenn Greenwald to talk about it. So he had to quit in order to be able to produce his own, article on it, because that's the breadth of the corruption of the Democratic establishment and the establishment in general, right? The establishment in DC.
Yeah. And they rather point the finger at home at the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys and whatnot. And I've said this before. You had John McCain, Joe Biden, and all these other figureheads backing actual white supremacist groups in the Ukraine, the Slovak Party, and they make the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys look like Cub Scouts, and you don't say shit about that. So it's just really kind of disgusting the way they've been duped, because people don't pay attention to that stuff. They feel you got to fix your stuff at home first, then we can worry about everything out there. Meanwhile, if we stay in our monetary system, 60% of our dollars that's created is spent where? Overseas, bombing little children and women.
Right.
Can you guys talk about, on the topic of censorship? Well, first of all, maybe somebody's got some more to say on the foreign policy. I think I agree. We're going to be talking about that. It's like Groundhog Day again. But you have an important story with censorship. We're all feeling the suppression. People feel like they have to self-censor. Weird stuff is going on with our Twitter accounts and our YouTube accounts and things like that. But you've been hit directly by YouTube and attacked by other people who should be your allies.
Yeah, so we got demonetized on YouTube. So that was a direct target to our pocket, but it was also a direct target to our audience who isn't allowed anymore to participate via giving us super chats, because for us ad revenue was never the greatest thing, because well, when you talk about foreign policy, Syria, Yemen, when you talk about the national security state, when you talk about elections, a lot of our videos got demonetized anyway. But it's the fact that they are stealing from us, basically, because they're still running their ads on our videos. They're still they're stealing our audience the ability to learn and contribute, and they want to shut us down. They want us to stop by attacking our pocket. That is censorship. It is a different form of censorship. It is more cryptic, but it is still censorship. And so what we've had been doing, because we knew this was coming, was putting people towards Rockfin, the cryptocurrency platform that we're in, which operates kind of like a co-op. And that's, luckily we have that, and luckily we have other methods of people helping us out, because this is what we do. This is what we do for a living. And it's essential that we continue doing that, because a lot of people aren't talking about election fraud. A lot of people aren't talking about the national security state. We have some people that are, but it's very few. And so by being here and being able to publicly speak and get that information out, more and more people are waking up and realizing these things. And so for us, it's the censorship thing is a big deal, especially with what's happening with Julian Assange, how he's still in Belmarsh prison, how now the Biden administration has said that they're going to proceed to extradite him. And that's what they want to do. He doesn't have to do that, but he's going to do it, as we all suspected. And so press freedoms are on the line. The independent thought is on the line. This is what Orwell warned about on his deathbed. This is the cryptic fascism we're in. And like I said previously, this fascism is not going to be what they're trying to fearmonger liberals into thinking it's going to be a Klansman or a Confederate flag wearing guy with horns. This type of fascism is so cryptic that they make you become cheerleaders and amplifiers of it.
Yeah.
Camel and
Go ahead,
Converse.
Kelley. Sorry.
I'm just saying it's Camel and Converse. That's how it's going to come.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Intersectional
I have a
fascism.
question about Rockfin, actually, if you know. Because after we saw what we saw with Parler, where they were just on Amazon servers, they were able to take them down. I don't know enough about Rockfin. Can you speak to that? Like, are there any possibility that
yeah.
can happen?
I asked that question to the CEO. I have a direct line to him because obviously we were kind of new when the platform started, and they've been awesome out there, whatnot. He's very in tune. His name is Martin Floriani, and he was once the head of digital at ESPN. And he's just a world of information to understand how this works. And he's been preparing for stuff like that. In other words, they're not just backed up on one server. There's multiple servers and multiple data out there to prevent that from happening. However, in any situation whatsoever, I will never, ever underestimate the elites and the people who run this planet. Maybe they'll blow up a satellite to take us down. And that's really kind of scary, too, as well, when you think about what's going on in Rockfin, because if they do shut down Rockfin, they've really completely strangled us. Right now, they got their hands on our necks, but we can breathe and we can possibly break through. But I will never underestimate them or what they can do and how they can do it. And they can also, just with like a lot of these cryptocurrency companies, these people who try to start new cryptocurrencies, they've gone after them like XRP and whatnot and saying what they're doing is unjust. So you can never underestimate what the elites can do to come after you in any way, shape, or form. When you think you're safe, Parler people thought they were safe going over there. So yes, they are getting back up against it, but you never know what could happen. And I just want to tell a really quick, funny story, because when we're talking about this stuff, is that I got chastised a lot for saying that if I had a gun to the head and I had to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump, I said, put the gun down, I'll vote for Donald Trump. Now, to make it clear, none of us here voted for Donald Trump. We never will. I don't think I've ever voted for a Republican in my lifetime. I can, 47 years old, I don't even remember voting for one. And not to say I won't in the future, but I mean, I never have, and nor would I have ever voted for Donald Trump. But the reason why, and I cried to my mother when Joe Biden won the day he did, is because the true definition of fascism from Benito Mussolini, and I should know this because I'm 66% Southern Italian, is that it's the government merging with corporations. Well, money-wise, if you just look at the receipts, the big tech industry, which is one of the biggest corporations out there right now, Silicon Valley, they control information and they control your voice. They gave Joe Biden $16 million. Donald Trump got less than $1 million. And I was scared that if he won, they would shut down our channel. Well, they didn't shut it down, but they demonetized it. And that's just one step away. And even though some people have gotten their monetization back, which allows them to continually work freely and fluently, which what they're trying to stop us from doing, it doesn't mean that they won't shut down the channel altogether. And I'm still waiting on that right now. Other channels have got their monetization back. We have not. There's been a certain group have not. So, being scared about this whole situation, but you can see it coming. We just showed a picture of Barack Obama toasting with Eric Schmidt and Mark Zuckerberg, and they flat out told you they were going out there to fight disinformation. Well, we've said it on the show before, and I'll say it again. It's not up for the federal government or Silicon Valley to decide what's right or what's wrong, what is true or what is false. That is for the people to decide what is right or wrong and what is true or is false. And if they're doing it for you, that is fascism.
Yeah. Wow. We need to make a
Yeah,
clip
I
just that.
call it blue fascism, because as you said, it's coming from the place where, I don't know, a textbook wouldn't tell you to expect this to happen. Sorry, Kelly, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it was just, spot on, Pasta. Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Kelley.
I think
try.
I think what really upsets me most is that you're getting hit from people who should be on your own side, if you will.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's like
I
that Bernie wing that is just is so stuck into like reforming the Democratic Party. I mean, that's a huge part of it. They're stuck in, AOC delivering democracy to them, which is really sad because, she's not going to do it. She's shown us that she is going to play ball already. So it's that sector of people that I think, and we talked about this on the last show, they're being manipulated through emotions, because a lot of the progressives have good intentions. Like they want equality, they want, people to be heard, people of color, they want all these things that are good, but they allow the Democratic and Republican establishment to manipulate them via this sort of emotional tug. Like, oh, do you look at all these Nazis? Do you want to be a part of them? Look, they're awful, they're white supremacists, look what they do to people of color, look at all this. And so what that does is say, well, Donald Trump has been inciting violence, you don't want him to say that. Oh, so have these right wingers, they're inciting violence, we need to censor these people. There's a limit to censorship, right? And then they bring up the parody of the paradox of intolerance, which is something that it's well known. It basically says if you are too tolerant of people who are intolerant, then you allow too much intolerance to come in. And that's basically what it says, that there has to be a limit to speech and free speech. But it's wrong, because you're still using the mechanism that who gets to decide what that is. And that's what Pasta said. Like, nobody should get to decide other than you, the person, the people can decide what they read. There are a lot of people who are vile and have a YouTube channel that I think shouldn't, why the hell do they have 300,000 subscribers? They're spreading all this like misinformation and all this stuff. But I would never say like they should be taken down, because it is their right to express whatever it is they want to express. It is our right to counteract that.
Yeah.
And have more speech to counteract that bad speech.
Yeah. To protect freedom of speech, you got to promote more speech. And they say that they're taking these people down, like these QAnoners or these people who promote these false conspiracies, because it leads to violence. But when they spewed WMDs for many, many years, didn't that lead to violence? I think there's over 1 million Iraqis misplaced or killed right now in that region from their conspiracy theory. And then they spent the last 4 years talking about Russiagate, which was xenophobic at best, but it didn't stop them from doing it. So there's really just this kind of this big bit of hypocrisy in a form of a sandwich they're giving to you. Yeah. And a lot of these progressives are buying it. They're biting right into it and saying, yeah, you're right, we have to shut the Nazis. We yelled and sounded the alarm when they took Alex Jones down. We said, this is going to open up the shit gate. And when that happens, forget about it. They'll eventually come for you. And they've been shutting down a lot of socialist networks and people who organize all the time. You can't let it happen. The way you fight for freedom of speech is by more speech. If somebody incites violence, that's one thing. But Donald Trump, by saying we got to fight like hell, I said, like, we got to fight like hell on my show today. And there's a montage of Eric Swalwell, Chuck the Schmuck Schumer, all these people saying fight like hell. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole thing. When you can twist the narrative and move the goalpost, then we're all going to be vulnerable to this.
The hypocrisy has been I mean, you would think I couldn't be shocked anymore, that I couldn't be like shaken anymore, but I am.
Yeah.
And
Hold my
it's not
beer.
just, yeah, it's not, I would say like we need a new word for it because it's hypocrisy on steroids. There's some gaslighting going on, like the real definition of gaslighting.
Yeah.
And the projection, I've been calling it like psycho projection,
Mhm.
because they'll just take what they are doing and then they'll put it on somebody else. And it happens so often. It just shakes me.
That all started in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. I mean, it was glaringly obvious that's what they were doing. But if you hadn't pulled back the curtain to see and hadn't figured that out yet, you believed it, and they just ran with it for 4 years. It's insane.
Yeah.
Do you
So-
want to go into like what you were saying about how do we move forward, like a real independent movement? Do you want to segue into that?
Yeah. I mean, listen, we've always been willing to talk to anybody who thinks differently than us, that has a different ideology than us, because maybe at the core they don't agree with the same things. Maybe they're not for Medicare for all, maybe they're not for any type of green climate change, whatnot and stuff. But there's a lot of people on that populist right, and these are like that Trump kind of group, people who've listened to his words. Now, maybe Donald Trump was not the most friendliest non-war president. I mean, let's call it like it is. He amped up the drone bombing, and then he took his certain spots where he tried to pull people out, whatever the case may be. I think it's safe to say that Biden will be worse when it comes to foreign policy than Donald Trump, but that's not saying much. However, his words and his rhetoric mean a lot. And he had a speech one time. He goes, I don't think the generals like me. I know the troops like me, but the generals, they don't, because they want this nonsensical, useless wars going on. You know what I'm saying? And him saying that, you'll see a lot of Trump people repeating that narrative. Now, they might not look into see things and see the bombing that's still going on, but that rhetoric is there. Now you have the election situation where Trump people who feel like they've been screwed, and the majority of those people that were at the Capitol were there for that reason. They felt the election was false.
Right.
They're now looking into the process of the elections and the way they work. And
Mhm.
nobody knows better than this group right over here, Kelley and Joanne. We know what we're all about when it comes to elections. The process, the framework alone is ridiculous. It is a avenue, a road, a highway for fraud to come in. So this is where we can make these connections. You know what I'm saying? I call myself a leftist libertarian. So when it comes to censorship, we can agree with these people that it's bad. When it comes to war, we can agree with these people that it's bad. When it comes to election, there's a whole group of people we can agree with that it's bad. So there is a chance and an opportunity. And that's what we look for. When we went to the Trump Stop the Steal rally, we weren't there just to cover it. We were there to educate people by simple language, saying, hey, listen, you keep saying voter fraud. Do me a favor. Say election fraud. That means we're not talking about the individual voters. We're talking about a body who's either, whether it be the establishment, Democrats, Republicans, somebody trying to steal the election. You know what they would say? Something, that's right. I'm going to say that. I found somebody who apologized to me. As I told him, we started following election integrity after 2016. And he goes, something? I'm sorry, we didn't pay attention to elections back then. We ignored it because it was the Democratic Party. So we are finding areas of opportunity for the populist mentality to come together with right and left. However, since they control the airwaves, since they control the media, this whole beat back, this browbeating and this beating down that you're a Nazi if you try to talk to anybody differently to you, that is going to be the biggest barricade to bust through. But we can bust through it, I hope.
Right. And there's a very big difference between talking to people you disagree with and forming an alliance to where you leave your ideology behind and you suddenly change your ideology. And now I go from being like a socialist to being like a Proud Boy. That's not going to happen. I mean, that's ridiculous. And there's also like this idea of painting a giant brush on everybody who's a Republican as being, a white supremacist, because there are Republicans who are not white supremacists who simply disagree with us on a lot of these ideologies. They don't want big government because, they've been educated to think that big government is always a bad thing, or big government has failed us as it has. And there are ways to be like, well, look, that just because I'm a socialist doesn't mean I want a giant government manipulating everything I do, because I don't. And so there's a lot of communication that hasn't happened and a lot of assumptions are made, which is why we're driven and wedged further and further apart, because people don't talk to each other. They just talk to their echo chamber. So having a Republican on, we had that kid from the Wall Street, who was Gavin Mario Wax, who was protesting for, you know,
Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, well, he was doing that, but he was also, he's a young Republican, and he is really in line in terms of anti-censorship, in terms of anti-Wall Street, in terms of, you know, we were talking a little bit about how we waste money on wars and stuff, but he's very, you know, he's more pro-police, and he's more, you know, he's definitely a Republican. But on those things we could agree on. And he went on, what's his name show?
Tim
Pool, who like I don't really like at all, who I think, you know, I don't like him at all. So, but like the fact that he was able to mention us, and the fact that he said, hey, they're real leftists and they're not like AOC, and it was just funny.
Controlled opposition.
Yeah, it was great, because like we're getting our name out there. And also we had a conversation with him where we were honest. I was never like, oh yeah, I'm gonna agree with this guy just because he's a Republican. No, I said, you know, we're gonna disagree on the police thing, we're gonna disagree on these things, but we had a conversation, and that flow of conversation opens up doors to him to listen and understand what a different type of leftist that's not an AOC or that's not a liberal is like, because all he's probably heard is that we are all like Kamala Harris. Yeah. And by all means, Kamala Harris is nowhere near anything remotely leftist to me. So
yeah, and that's the same mistake I think a lot of people on the left made when the Tea Party got in there. We kind of painted that broad kind of stroke of, oh, the Republicans are Republicans, when there was a direct divide within that Republican Party, and Tea Party members were different than the establishment Republicans. But I got to also tell you really quickly, when we went into one of our first Trump rallies, we were all wearing our Convo Couch shirts. People were looking it up and saying, who's the Convo Couch? And I can hear them whispering, oh, look who that is. That's that girl over there. She's a socialist. And look at these guys. These guys cover Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. And then we started asking questions, and we started asking everybody. And even Katie Hopkins happened to be there, and she jumped on there, and we pushed back in a very kind of diplomatic way. We said, well, listen, a lot of people on the left say that racism exists within our judicial system and our prison system. And if racism doesn't exist, and this was right after Nikki Haley said that racism didn't exist, I said, then why are our prisons filled with mostly Black people when only 15% of the population is Black and 50% is white? And they had to answer that whatnot, and they came back whatnot. And then we asked about Julian Assange. But when we were done and we had pushback and we were talking, and I finished the conversation with Katie Hopkins and another Trump guy, they were applauding us as we walked away. Because even though we had a different ideology and we thought differently than them, we presented ourselves like human beings, like adults, saying, hey, let's talk about our differences, rather than the cancel culture and the shaming which goes on in the left.
Or the mocking.
And the mocking. And stuff.
Like, there are other channels who will go and interview people on the ground, but they'll mock them. They'll be like, oh, this guy, like they'll try to catch him in something, make him look like they're dumb. And like some people may very well be dumb, but what do you get from that? What does the public get from that? What do the American people get from you mocking somebody? Then you might as well be an entertainment show rather than a journalist. Because if you're not asking these questions about Julian Assange, if you're not asking these questions about what Pasta was asking regarding the prison system, if you're not trying to make these people somehow think differently from a different perspective, that is not, it's in a way that is inviting, not in a way that is condescending, they're never going to change their mind. In fact, they're going to hate you more, and you're going to prove their point more.
We already had Alexandra Pelosi, is that her name? Nancy Pelosi's daughter, do that.
Christine Pelosi.
Christine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, or if you want that, watch Bill Maher. I mean, we've got enough of that, right?
Yeah.
So I applaud you guys for doing that. That's fantastic. But the trick is, though, that the minute you like align, or not align with, but when, as you know, when you talk to certain people, you'll get smeared even harder. So I think it's really the tightrope to walk there. I want to tell a quick story about a couple of years ago, and I'm not calling out any names. There are a lot of great people that were part of Progressive Army, but there was a chat, just a text group that I was in. And it was when Caitlin Johnstone came out and made kind of the same argument we're talking about right now, which is that we need to talk to certain people, have an alliance with some on the right, populist right. But she mentioned Mike Cernovich, and everybody went ape. And
I know. I remember that.
I watched, though, in this chat, I was just blown away at what I witnessed. So first it went from them critiquing her writing. I mean, just tearing it down. She's not like, this isn't Atlantic Monthly, New Yorker kind of writing, you know, it was more lower level, whatever. I mean, started out with that and descended into, and this is all women by this point, mind you, I think one guy was still in there, tearing her appearance apart, you know, I mean, just, it was absolutely disgusting. And I thought, wow, just for her making this suggestion. Now, I do think that was probably a bad choice to say Cernovich. So I think we have to be really careful about who we choose to not interview, but have like alliances with, because the mobs will come. That's what they're gonna do. So,
Yeah. And I just wanted to say, like I said, I think there's a difference between talking to somebody and aligning with somebody. I think when I look at alliances, I think, you know, I'm against a red-brown alliance, meaning like aligning with actual literal Nazis. There are real Nazis, and I have zero intention of aligning with them. But would I interview one of them? Absolutely. And I would absolutely push back and say, you know, why do you believe this and that? And here are some facts of this and that. There have been people that we are trying to get on the show. One of them is Reverend Annie Chambers, and she was a Black Panther, and she actually shut down a street with a Ku Klux Klan member.
Yeah.
And people didn't like hearing that because they're like, wait, Black Panthers never actually worked with anybody. I'm like, well, actually, because they needed to make that situation happen, they did do that. I'm not saying we do it. I'm saying it's happened before. But what I'm saying about alliance is the alliance must be a working class alliance, because at the end of the day, there really is no middle class. We're all working class. Everybody that is not an elitist is working class. And I think if people are poor, or if people have lost their jobs, don't have healthcare, don't have anything backed up, if the government is failing them, they don't have trust in their election system, that supersedes any sort of ideology that you have pinned on yourself as, oh, I'm a socialist. Right now, in this very moment, we don't have the capacity to have a fair system where we have a Green Party, a Socialist Party, a Democrat Party, or Republican Party, and then you know the Tea Party. We don't have a place where we have those ideas, because we have a duopoly, which is basically one giant oligarchy, and one of those always wins. So we need to first get to the point where we have an even keel to fight for these ideas, to actually then debate these ideas. Because right now we can't even debate these ideas, because the internet is censoring everybody via Silicon Valley. So until we get the chance to debate, then you can't say that, you know, and a working class alliance is a bad thing.
Yeah. And I think also too, just to reiterate too, when it came to Reverend Annie Chambers and it came to Fred Hampton working with these groups, it's about economics, right? That's how you get a lot of people to join these groups like the Ku Klux Klan and all these lower members and stuff, is that they're poor, they have nothing, they don't have great education. And then somebody comes along and says, you know why you got nothing? Because they're giving stuff away to the Black man, and they get college that your kid doesn't get, and they get subsidies or whatever. And now all of a sudden those persons, like, they divide people that way through economics. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why we always talk about economics and how it can repair that bridge and whatnot. And so I'm just looking for every single avenue. But once again, talking to people who disagree with you is very, very important. You know, even our old producer, hi, Kelsey, she was telling me the other day, she was saying that, like, the way that, and this is a person who's just getting into politics, she doesn't have the deep dive, but what she's witnessed in these last couple of years is the cancel culture being the worst thing, because she says if you don't ever talk to anybody who thinks differently than you, then you're going to get nowhere. And they're making us more tribal, and that's how they maintain control.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's always about redirecting the anger, legitimate anger, at, you know, somewhere else other than the people who are really most responsible for it. And so I'm not really out to change anybody's mind. That's something I've changed about myself over the years. I'm just out to have an honest conversation, right? Because my mind, if it's to be successful, my mind has to be open too, and I'm going to have to compromise this. And I think what happens is when you don't set out to change someone's mind, you might plant a seed. They may plant a seed too. That has happened with me too. But that's one of the attitudes that I've changed. But the other thing is that in the foreign policy world, basically there has always been sort of a broad alliance. I've been talking to people who they're conservatives, they're libertarians, and people on the left. And there's already an informal network of people, like some of the conservatives are, I think they call them foreign policy realists and things like that. So that that road was already laid, and I just intend to do more of it. And I just noticed, and I've noticed this since I was more of a partisan during the Bush years. I sort of came back into the fold with the Democrats, and I got involved in some of the blogs like Daily Kos and things like that. And then around the 2010 and a little bit before time frame, the anti-surveillance groups alliances started to come together, and like you were saying, Tea Party. And I had people warning me not to mix with them. Don't talk to libertarians, they told me. They might trick you. There's this air of superiority, which is frankly is bred on the left. You are taught to feel superior to other people and to talk down to them, and and to just turn your nose up at ever you know working with them on anything. And that is it's just so damaging to both sides, to the people who are acting like they're superior when they're not, and the people who they're treating that way. And so I just want to eradicate that. I want to talk to anybody, and I'm all about common ground, and I've kind of already been, but I'm refocused on that because it's so obvious that that it is a goal of the establishment to divide people. And they'll
Absolutely.
take it, as Pasta said, never underestimate the ruthlessness, because that's how they win, really, is because they're the most ruthless.
Yeah.
And you're going to get hit. You're going to get hit for it, but I think it's really dangerous. I've also got, kids who are of military age, and if we end up in a civil war, you can have brother against brother. I don't think that would happen in my family, but you never know. And just the idea of a civil war is terrifying. And I think there are some people who seem like they want that. Or maybe they're so
Absolutely.
stupid they think they could take us up to the brink. And they're playing with fire with the things that they're manipulating right now. And I think it's horrible.
Yeah.
So to plant a seed, as you said, Joanne, I was noticing in your chat tonight, Pasta and Fee, that there were several people talking about third party. It usually comes up. And I love MPP. I've actually volunteered with them. I think they're great. But I got thinking more about, with the article you were going over and all these groups. And anytime you have a party, then you're going to have, first of all, you're going to have the introduction of money and a hierarchy, a structure, and then these alliances with other groups. And as we're learning, even these small so-called grassroots groups, they're not really grassroots, maybe.
Right.
So I want to plant this seed, something I tried to start with CWAC and CFAR, which were two candidate organizations that Tim Canova was part of, and many other great candidates, but he was probably the most well-known. I really believe strongly that an independent coalition of candidates that aren't aligned to a party structure could really do some damage, but in a good
Yeah.
way. Get them behind the election security issues, but have them working together, but not into the structure that's got the control outside of their own. So I could see you guys really being part of that because of what
James Boguski is doing something like that right now, independent Congress right now. He's trying to point out and find different independent candidates across the country that they can run, because I think he's using the model of what Bernie Sanders did. You know what I'm saying? Was not necessarily joining a party, but run as an independent and keep running and then win. And if you had 5 or 6 independents in Congress, in certain situations, they would be able to bond together and say, hey, we can swing power so much in this way right now, and they'd have such a huge voice. So yeah, I'm sorry.
Just more than anything, people need to know, when you organize any sort of organization that has a top-down hierarchy or has a very condensed central power, you're not, it's always susceptible to co-opting. It's always susceptible to any kind of infiltration. That's the problem with, you've seen it in DSA, you've seen it in Our Revolution, you've seen it in Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress. Every single one of them are co-opted. Even MPP is having those same exact issues at the core, organizing at the hierarchy, because it's just a natural occurrence of what happens when your power is centralized. The problem with that, it's a twofold thing, right? Because when you have a decentralized power structure, it's less organized, and but it's easier, it's less susceptible to corruption, because then your power is more spread out. And so I 100% agree with you. Like, before people have a Green Party, is, a socialist party, and all these parties that people want, you need to have the framework be there. Right now, we don't have integrity in our elections. So it doesn't matter if MPP or a Green Party do a great job and get all 50 states and all of this, if they're going to rig the elections. So in order to have a fair system, we first need to fight for it. And the only way we're going to get that is there is a coalition of people who are actually anti-establishment, who want election reform, who want to have less censorship, who want free speech, etc. That's the only way we're going to get to a point where we then can separate and have whatever party you want to run. But right now, you can't. You're not going to have enough time to build a Green Party, to build any party. There has to be a coalition of it, and unfortunately, if it's through one entity, it's not going to work. And the left needs to learn how to do that, because they don't know how to work in decentralized structures, which is ironic. In America, they should know, because that's how most things have happened. The civil rights movement and other movements before happened. The anti-war movement were not super centralized, but they were very organized, and they were able to get things done through direct action. And that's what we're lacking here. We're lacking direct action. We're lacking the ability to actually take a hands-on approach that's not just relying on AOC putting something to a floor vote, but that it's pressuring AOC, or it's pressuring Nancy Pelosi, or it's pressuring. That pressure doesn't just come from the electorate. That pressure has to come from the people.
Yeah. And I think too, that we all know here in this room that what are the main goals of the establishment, whether it be Republicans or Democrats, when it comes to our main elections, is like a cartel. You cheat within your own territory, but under no circumstances can a third party get more than that 5%, under no circumstances. And that's why we've seen the Green Party get cheated. And just recently, there's a lot of people talking about the Libertarian Party getting cheated in Michigan again, where they would have got over that 5% threshold and whatnot. So, I mean, that is something we need to combat. And that's a shame that the left is not even looking at that when it comes to our elections. It's really a shame. We need to get it under control.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm not ready. I'm not gonna spend any of my energy on another left party.
Yeah.
It's either a broad coalition,
Absolutely.
or nothing. For me, I've just been to this rodeo too many times, and I guess I've learned too much. I'm not doing it. It's a futile effort with the situation that we're in.
Right.
But
appeal to the independents also is the problem, and a lot of the rhetoric with MPP is not going to appeal to populist right. I don't even like using
At all.
right terms anymore, but and we're not going to agree on everything, but maybe 60% of things. So
yeah,
I think now's the time for it. I'm not quite sure this would have been possible at other times, but I think enough people across the spectrum have been hit hard enough and have kind of seen what's going on. You could sort of see this start to happen in 2016. And you hear people talking about, like you mentioned, like differentiating. Oh, no, those are one of the honest progressives, when normally progressive is just a really spit dirty word kind of thing. But anyway, I think the time right now, the time I think for a new party on the left was 2016, without any doubt. After that election was time, and there were all kinds of people out there pushing back against that, because I think it was their goal to that was their job, to make sure it didn't happen. But now, now's the time for a broader coalition. But hey, I don't want to keep you guys too much longer, and we want to roll into a bonus question. You think now is a good time to do that? Because we're
Whatever
talking
you want
about
to.
elections
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So for the bonus question, we want to talk about overall the election integrity, what you saw when you were there January 6th at the Capitol, and the impeachment narrative that has developed, and sort of hold that up against what you actually saw with your own eyes, and just your thoughts on what you think is happening. And if you want to bring up that time story, I just want to say to our listeners, right before we recorded this, the Convo Couch had a live stream that is a must watch, where they analyzed that Time magazine article, which Kyle and I talked about in the last episode of Around the Empire, a Swapcast. If you want to bring that up, I don't know if we have enough time, but if we don't, I just recommend everybody go look at their show from tonight.
Yeah.
So I know that's kind of a big ticket, but let's give it a try.
The answer to the bonus question is in the bonus segment for patrons. You can get access to these segments. There's one for almost every interview by subscribing at Patreon. And there will be a new platform for bonus segments as well pretty soon, which I'll tell you about later. Plus, you get access to other patrons-only episodes and to our new Discord channel where we can talk among ourselves, do some Q&A live streams and Zoom calls and such. So that's my tease, and I hope some of you will join us. Now I'll continue with the interview wrap-up.
Tell everybody where to find your work, please.
The Convo Couch on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, but more importantly, we have a Rockfin. That's ROKFIN, The Convo Couch. Right, fam?
Yes. And yeah, Facebook too, Instagram, we're there as
Patreon.
well, Patreon. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys,
It
for
means a
having us
lot
on.
to help us out right now, because obviously with the monetization, because that's what they want us to do. They don't want us to do this as much as we can. They want us to kind of hit us in the pocket. So therefore we have to find other means that take away from the Convo Couch, but we're not going to do that because we are people powered and the people have been speaking to us. And I got to tell you, throughout this whole process, I am just tickled pink from all the love we've been getting and people telling us, hey man, keep talking about elections, keep talking about this stuff. Don't be deterred. You guys are right on. People are listening. And at the end, you're going to come out shining and looking good because, it's very easy. If you look at elections, you know what's going on. So, yeah, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And I just want to thank the people out there and Joanne and Kelley for having us on and giving us the opportunity on your platform to speak our truth, because that's what we're doing.
We love having you. Let's stick together. Let's keep at it. And thanks so much. It was great talking to you again.
Thank you, guys.
Love you guys.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Special thanks to Craig and Fiorella from the Convo Couch. Follow them on Twitter and other social media platforms at the Convo Couch, at Fiorella_IM and Yo Pasta. And find their show on YouTube, Rockfin, Patreon. This podcast is independent media, so listener support is important. Patreon.com/AroundTheEmpire, PayPal.me/AroundTheEmpirePod. You can find the podcast on any mobile podcast app, on the website AroundTheEmpire.com, on Patreon, or on YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe. And we'll also be on new platforms soon, and I'll reveal those very soon. Follow on Twitter @AroundTheEmpire, and we'll see you next time. Take good care, everybody.